And so the panel today is called How Hard Is It to Build Hardware That Actually Works? And I'll invite here the moderator, Ivan. Moderator, are you set? Are you coming up, Ivan? Just in a moment. And we'll have a number of panelists. I know that one of them is still on his way from the airport, but he'll join as soon as he can. And the other ones will be setting up in a minute over here. All right. Almost set. A couple of details. And after this session, the next one will be on deep tech. So we'll be continuing the 50 founders battle with a vertical of deep tech. Come back here if you're interested in that, but please stay over. Ivan, are you ready now? Yeah? Uber. Yeah. Does it work? Switzerland is my good 1, 2, 1, 2. Where's the mic? We need the mic. Yes. And at Vector as well. You could mic working? No. Show it to me. Unmuting. This one also you can yes. Does it work now?
1, 2. Yes,
yay.
It works.
Oh, soft
Hi, everybody. How are ya? I love the energy. Come on. How are ya? Okay, we'll work on your energy.
We'll get there.
Give me a second. Hi, how are ya? Happy to be here.
Yay.
Should we start?
Yeah. I'll give it to you. Give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I know we need to work a little bit on your energy, guys, but I hope that this conversation today is going to be interesting and valuable for all of you. As it was mentioned earlier, we have amazing people joining this panel today. So I want to, every single time somebody comes on stage, please put your hands together and give them a warm welcome. First, we welcome from Uber Eats, Charlyn Gonda. There you go. We have coming all the way from Romania, Mr. Florea from Fitbit.
Hey guys.
And coming all the way from the airport, still on his way, Raph Crouan. He will be joining us as soon as he arrives. He will join us, so stick with him. He is from Startupbootcamp. My name is Hernandez, and I really hope that we're going to have a great time today. So, first of all, maybe if you can talk a little bit about, introduce yourselves, say a little bit about you. Charlyn?
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Charlyn Gonda. I am a software engineer at Uber Eats by day, and by night I like to make hardware things. So lately I've been really upping my skills on prototyping and making hardware projects. I did this project called 12 Months of Makes, which is last year I made one project every month for 12 months, and I've learned a lot since then.
Awesome. Nice. Rares?
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm Florea. I'm the regional country manager for Central and Eastern Europe. All right.
What have you done?
Can you feel the energy?
Yeah.
I'm super glad to be here, and I was actually looking before at the startup competition. I really missed that. So we had a startup. It was called VectorWatch, built and made in Bucharest. The first smartwatch in the world with a 30 days battery life. After three super nice years of going to the market, developing the product and basically launching in about 25 markets, we sold this particular company to Fitbit. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our experience, first of all hardware and then software, and how hard it is to build actually a viable product starting from scratch. So I'm looking forward to your questions.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, let's make something clear. As we know, most discussion panels suck. I mean, it's a talking head show with everybody just agreeing with each other, showing how smart we are. Nah, this is not what we're going to do today. So what I want to imagine, guys, that we are in a bar, having a nice beer, having a nice chat.
I'm opening mine.
Yeah, you're good at that, I know. But this is a nice conversation.
This is the hardware that doesn't
work. And we are here for you guys. So if you guys have any questions, just raise your hand. I know that the team has microphones available. And if you guys have a very good question, actually I know that my friend Rares has a little surprise from you coming from Fitbit. Okay, so a little bit of motivation if you guys want to make this a little bit more interactive.
To spice it up a little bit.
To spice it up a little bit. So if you guys have any questions, let's make this a nice, cool conversation and not just a talking head show with
Yes.
two ugly guys and a beautiful great lady. Okay. I think a good place to start is this your story. As you mentioned, Vector, you guys, you started as a small company in Romania, and you created remarkable smartwatches, and as a result, Fitbit reached out to you and brought you in. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your early days.
All right.
At Vector.
So Romanians and watches, or Romanians and smartwatches, it just doesn't go. It's like Riga and 50 degrees outside. It's completely different. So we wanted to build a product with unique features, right? So we said, okay, what's missing in the market? We saw a void in the market, and we tried to create a smartwatch that was unique throughout software and especially throughout hardware. So at the time when we launched in 2015, there was no other product that could have a 30 days battery life. Now, how do you get to 30 days battery life? So first of all, we built our own hardware. Building your own hardware means, first of all, prototyping it on 3D printers. So we started really, really low. We started really from scratch. We hired, because we didn't have a ton of money, we hired one of the best students. One of our co-founders is actually an associate professor for the Polytechnical Institute of Bucharest, and actually he basically handpicked some of his best students to help us out and to design and prototype the watch. I remember, first of all, we had imagine a dashboard like this big, made out of cardboard and then plastic, where you put all of these elements, and all of this, 1 year after, transformed into this little bitty thing that actually works and sends you notifications, and afterwards we sold it to Fitbit. So we started with the 3D printing in Bucharest. We got to a viable product. Then we started to clone it to mass produce it in China. Now imagine a product like this being also waterproof, right? 50 meters, 5 ATM. So from what you think you know about hardware until you actually go to the factory. Actually, my guy spent nearly a year in going back and forth, Bucharest, London, San Francisco, China, Shenzhen, and what you do in a laboratory in your office compared to what is actually there, what they mass produce. It's like, okay, yeah, you know this button here that's supposed to be pushing is not pushing, right? You know this nice, beautiful design that you have for the outer body, there's water in it. Now what do you do? So in this respect, we failed in a lot of ways up until the moment of the launch, but we were lucky enough. We launched at Baselworld, the temple of the temple of watches, and actually the watches were ready 3 days before the actual watches. The bodies came from China, from the factory, 3 days before. So we had 3 days for us to put in the software, update the watches with the latest software, and for us to actually have a viable product and to present it to the crowd.
So at the last moment, you literally...
Yes. The night before, I swear to God, so the night before Baselworld, they received in Switzerland the final product. And we had, imagine the watch had 3 buttons, so always in the beginning we had problems with the pushers, so pushing the buttons and the watch still being waterproof, and it worked seamlessly. We had, I don't know, nearly 1,000 people that tested our watches. We had about, let's say, 20 people demoing the watch. We had more than 1,000 people that tested out the watches, and all of them worked perfectly. It was like, Jesus Christ. But the night before, actually the night before Baselworld, the brand launch, we finally received them. So I've been through some of the stages that and the emotions that I see the founders in the room have been through. It's not easy, it's not for everybody, but it's a really nice journey. And hold on.
Okay, wait, I promised my friend Raph that when he arrives, I'm gonna give him the chance to have a spectacular entrance. So as soon as Raph is here, I want all of you again, to welcome him with the loudest applause as you can, okay?
Awesome. Yay!
Welcome, everybody!
Welcome, baby.
Beautiful.
Hello. Very nice to meet you. How are we doing? Good to see you guys. Sorry about that.
Beautiful.
Raph, welcome. All right, so Raph Crouan, CEO and founder of Startupbootcamp IoT.
Good.
Welcome, my friend.
Welcome.
Rades was just sharing with us the story of how the early days of Vector, how they started with 3D printing their prototypes and stuff. Well, maybe let's talk a little bit about prototyping, because today we're focusing on, I'm sure that there is a lot of people interested on the whole element, the whole process from the point of view of hardware. Let's talk about prototyping. Can you share us some ways to start prototyping? So maybe somebody had an idea and they might not know how to do it. Maybe Charlyn, maybe you can share some ideas of that.
Yeah, so my background is in software, and I found out, I got really interested in making hardware prototypes and hardware projects, and so I decided that I would try to see what it would take to get started from zero. And it turns out there are a lot of companies that make development boards specifically for people who maybe don't have as much experience with hardware. And so there's a few examples. One of them is Particle. They make these development boards that are internet connected, either via Wi-Fi or cellular, and they also provide sort of the firmware stack that goes with it, so you can very easily manage a fleet of devices. And these development boards are typically a little bit more bigger. They're more fully featured than what you would use in a mass-produced product. But what it allows you to do is to very quickly turn your idea into a physical prototype and then allow people to try it out, allow your user researchers perhaps to try to see what interfaces you would actually want to use in the product. And so it's actually a little bit easier these days to pick up a modern microcontroller and just kind of start hacking away, which is a really good place to be, I think.
Okay. What do you guys do? Do you guys continue to use 3D printing for your prototypes, or?
So now we work for a startup that became a semi-corporation. So Fitbit has about 2,000 employees, split in 4 development centers across the US, so San Francisco, Boston, Bucharest, and Minsk. But how can I say this? I still see in the development office in Bucharest, where we have about 230 people, I still see boards that resemble what Charlyn was saying before. So from scratch, in the beginning, we still use technologies like this, especially when you want to try out a new idea, and especially because the smartwatches that we have today, that Fitbit has today, are in a way based on the technology that we had at Vector Watch and also Pebble, that was also acquired by Fitbit. So we kind of stick to the same story. So yes, the answer is yes. We start from that, and then we test also some apps, like Charlyn was saying, directly on the big motherboard. And then we take it into mass production.
All right.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how there are a lot more companies that sort of offer these development boards. Like, for example, Google has an Android Things platform now. And so if you have Android engineers in your company, it's possible that you could kind of just pick up the Android Things platform and create an IoT product with the skills that your team already has.
Correct.
Which is very cool.
All right. Raph, anything that you might want to add from the point of view of prototyping? Are you still catching your breath from running?
I'm good. Ready to talk now. Yeah, so I'm at the very beginning of the story with the companies that we have. So we help on average with the hardware product about 20 companies a year minimum. And those guys are at the beginning of the journey. So they really are not Arduino level, because they should come with us with an existing product. So the prototype is already done, so the fast prototyping phase is gone, normally, usually. Then, of course, you got some surprises, because there's an iteration behind it. But we start from the point of view where they need to sort of get to the production line really sort of fast. And so you can't do that for the first sort of 6 months of iteration in your prototype. But we do have a fast lab in London that we built for those guys to work, and there's all kind of combination of devices that we use, from 3D printers to laser cutters, CNC machines, all kind of different devices to cool it up. Of course, solders as well, so you can play with the different kits. The one thing I wanted to add on this is that when I started this journey 6 years ago on my own, a little bit after having left Apple, which was not at prototyping stage really anymore, the market for fast prototyping was radically different. In 5 to 6 years, this has grown into a full-fledged industry. I remember the times where we were talking to the Intel of this world, and the first sort of semiconductor products that were distributed as an IoT development kit were done on almost a confidentially based. People didn't really know where to find them. They sort of wanted to seed them out as test bed and products, but nobody really built anything on those. They were just sort of to try it out for the R&D departments. Now people really create product out of those things. Right? And then they, as you mentioned, the big fives now are looking into having real sort of platform development platforms on the software and hardware. Of course, Google acquiring Tony Fadell in the whole hardware piece was definitely to build the hardware company. There's all kind of different things that have merged into that. So it's a different market now. It's a lot easier to build a prototype for sure.
Correct. Cool. But now, I mean, I'm sure that, okay, we go from prototyping, okay, building one product, that's okay, but how do you go from one product to 100,000? That's very often what I see a lot of startups struggling, right? They go into Kickstarter and that they go to Indiegogo and they come with an idea and they did a prototype, but to the scale, they don't understand what it means to go there. Maybe you guys can share some points on what it takes to go from a small little product into mass production.
I'd like to take the lead on this one.
Oh.
So we hired as acting CEO. We took Joe Santana. Joe was the ex-CEO of Timex Corporation for the past 10 years. So why would a person like that, with that sort of magnitude and skills, why would they come to Romania to believe in an idea that nobody has heard about, right? So the guy was excited about the product. Now, okay, let's do it. So we used Joe's connections because nobody would talk to us, especially the watch industry is kind of eclectic. The factories as well do their mass production 2-3 years in advance, so everything is like booked. So we tried with a few factories and a few connections of our own, but we failed. So actually, we got Joe to convince one of the factories that we used to produce the cases for one of the most reputable watch companies in the world. And we got them to build for us 50,000 units, so 50,000 shells or bodies or for the watch. And it was something, when we tried, they said, okay, we're stuck for the next 3 years. So the next 3 years, the production is all set up. So there's no place for you in the queue. So you have to wait for 3 years until we're going to deliver to you the shells. Without Joe's connection, we would have never been able to manufacture physically the products because there was no space for us. Everything was already spoken for or whatever, paid for. And what's really, what we found out the hard way is you have to pay most of it in advance. So at least for the materials that they're going to use on the cases, we paid for everything in advance. Now imagine, startup Romania / paying for 50,000 cases that I assure you were not cheap. And
ouch.
Yeah, and we at that particular time, we didn't have a finished product. So okay, you buy the case, but you don't know what you put inside is going to be, because we didn't have a finished product, a viable product.
A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we couldn't have waited until then because the guys would have said to us, you know what, come back in 4 years or 5 years. So with Joe's luck, it was something like, please produce, small quantity, because they were producing a series of 1 million plus. So you go there, you say, okay, I want 1 million cases this year, you make 100,000 per month, and that's it. We said, okay, please squeeze us in here, we only want 50,000, but actually those 50,000 were more than the funding that we had at that particular moment. So it's quite a tricky, it's quite a tricky journey.
Does that mean that the size constraint of your final guts of the watch had to just somehow fit into the shell?
Yes, had to fit in those 42 millimeters.
Amazing! Wow.
Yes.
So what I've seen, your story reminds me. There's one thing you said in there which is critical for me is a production line is as good as your working capital, right? So
correct.
Hardware is, I'm going to pledge you. Everybody knows that hardware is hard because it's capital intensive, right? Particularly at the beginning of the journey, it's going to cost you a marginally higher amount of money than any software product out there, for sure. Having said that, nowadays, I can tell you that, and we'll need to differentiate consumer from B2B, right? B2C and B2B are very different markets. But if we'll take the B2C angle, which is the one we're just talking about, there is no point in reinventing the wheel nowadays. You can bet that probably on a 90% base cases, your shell, the mold, the product format is probably somewhere on the shelf in China, already there.
Correct.
And you can reuse that at least for the first production batch until you get enough capital to be able to iterate and then maybe making it your own. Don't try to be an Apple. It's not going to work. You're going to fail at that, right? It's going to cost you $1 million that you don't have. And
being an adult sucks.
Yeah, well, exactly. But the capital is really hard to find. And when you get that capital, use it wisely. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use it to really sort of be able to get enough runway to iterate that product to a point where you're comfortable with getting to where you need to be in the next 6-7 months of batch production. There will always be errors. There will always be problem on the production line. You will never get it right in the first place. So you need that sort of cashback that you have.
But maybe adding to that, something that is important, yes. One thing that I think is very important for everybody is you really need to do your homework and getting to know who are these potential Chinese partners. Yeah. Because I've heard a lot of horror stories of, we just go to China, we just get Shenzhen, and then we just Google it and order it. You really need to do your homework and make sure that you're Google, getting the right partners there. Before we continue, start thinking about your questions. By the way, do you have any questions? No questions? Oh yes, we have a question here.
Come on, be brave.
Yeah.
Maybe we can.
Okay, great. So you earlier talked about prototyping your own company, ours. How do you feel it's different to prototype at Fitbit now? How has the whole prototyping...
Could you get the microphone a little bit closer, because
is this better?
He don't hear you well.
So I was going to ask, how does prototyping now at Fitbit differ to the prototyping when you were in your startup? And it's a bit late now because you've kind of moved on from the topic at that point.
I'll try to break it down quite simple. So imagine our whole company was 40 people, 40, including accounting, including CEO, founders, and so on and so far. So basically I think we had 5 people in the hardware department, plus Dan, one of the co-founders, the Polytechnical Institute teacher. So you have a team of people / brainstormers. We do this, we decide, boom, we go to China, try to replicate it, and that's it. Now we have 4 development offices, so San Francisco, Boston, Bucharest, and Minsk. All of them do bits and pieces. And imagine, let's say, a monster, a chain of approval that is way more complicated and more elaborated. And the materials, for example, that we use now, in Vector, we were using the same material. So we were using stainless steel 306L or Nano 5L. And at Fitbit, we use either nano-molded aluminum, the same one that we use in the aerospace industry, or plastic, or metal, or something else. So it's every type of hardware product has a different, let's say, chain of approval. So the monster is really, really big. The chain of approval is indeed slower, but more, how can I say this, more conscious and self-aware, because you impact at the end of the day millions of consumers, tens of millions of consumers. So we sold about 90 million devices in 11 years at Fitbit. So if you decide one day, okay, John has a great idea, let's do it. We decide in an office and we do it there, and then you really impact a ton of consumers. So also, we cannot afford to Mickey Mouse on this one, as in before. We were a startup in Romania, okay, the buttons don't work. Okay, who cares, right? Okay, there's a button that doesn't work. Okay, now, being a publicly traded company, if a button doesn't work or something, you have the risk that, okay, shares fall down and you lose 10, 20, 50, 100 million in a day.
Starting to say can't fuck it up anymore. He has to be a grown-up now.
Yep, correct. In plain Romanian, yeah,
There you go.
Thou shalt not fuck it up. Correct.
I'm curious about something. I wonder how you would test at scale, because I imagine at Vector you probably had testing rigs and then you would get some samples from the factory and do it yourself. But how does that work if it's huge, a huge amount?
So we were spending so much time there. So back and forth between Irina then and the hardware team, they were plus minus a year and 2 months. Every 2 months they were there, like spending physically 2 months in the factory.
Oh wow!
Because you talk to the guy now, you do the product, and in the evening there's 2 buttons on the watch instead of 3. You look at it like, was this not supposed to have 3 buttons? Yeah, well, we got this offer there, and it's €2 cheaper. And
2, 3 buttons, different
yeah,
details.
well, and how can I answer to your question? We have a ton of people that are working in the factories that are basically Fitbit employees as well.
I see.
So basically, we control we control way better versus the relationship supplier. I was one of the guys, and I was not even one of the most important guy. We were like, this guy that you produce also 50,000 for in a year.
Your weight on a production line when you have 100 million product versus a 10,
you can
it's
decide.
not exactly the same, right? So you have a certain limit of guarantee of control of quality when you have such weight in your production line. Some companies, and by the way, you don't always need to go to China, but some of the classic rules in China is you got tenths of units, thousands of units, 100,000 of units, and then the rest, right? Below the thousands of units, they don't even look at you. They don't need to because they have enough production line, unless it's a Me Too product and they just plug it into the middle. So that's where your product...
Which is something that probably they've done for us. And I'd like to piggyback off Raph's idea of before, that your product might already be on the shelf. So you're sitting here in Europe and you go to them and you say you have this fabulous idea, and they're already, either if it's not already on the shelf, from day one when you sign the contract with them, till the day your product will actually get on your shelves here, there is a huge chance that some other guy thought of something similar. He goes to the manufacturer opens the blueprint and says, look, I have this for you, right? So I will also give you an example for the Vector days. They were 2 or 3 months after they started delivering the cases to us. Already they were talking to 2 huge companies to sell them basically the same cases that they've built for us. So also for them, but like in the scale of millions. So also for them as a factory, it was something very good because they got to experiment on a smaller brand. If they would have screwed it up for somebody bigger, the situation would have been different. But they experimented with us, and basically they sold the idea or tried to sell the idea to some other big shots.
Well, we could keep talking and talking because this is very, very interesting conversation. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. But before we go, maybe one key point, one key lesson that you would like to share very quickly, very briefly for everybody. Charlyn.
I think the prototyping stage is probably one of your most important stages, because that's when you can validate the idea, validate the product, and you can do that very quickly, actually. And you probably wouldn't need to hire right away if you just wanted to do a lot of testing.
Cool. Hernandez. Sure.
If and when you want to make a product, hardware, software, make it your own, build it from scratch. And be original. Don't just go to China, pick an OEM from there, put your brand on it, and there's your product. Build it from scratch. Be original.
Raph?
Plan for the unexpected. Get some cash on the side and make sure you have some reserve, because otherwise that's going to kill your company.
All right, well, I want to thank you all for being here today. And sorry that we could not get more questions today. But as we promised, for the gentleman that had a great question, what's your name?
Robert, like Robert De Niro.
Robert, if you would like to join us here on stage very briefly, Radis has a small present for you.
Oh.
And we want to thank you all very much for letting us be here today. We will be around if you guys have any questions. Catch them up.
Well done.
So Robert, thank you for
Congratulations.
the question.
Thank you very much, guys, everybody. Have a great day.
Bionic.
And
Hope
see you
enjoy
around.
it.
Thank you to the panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Hey, good to see you.
thank you.